could be the week where it's actually, oh, there we go.
All right.
Bye.
Yay. So Tansy, and hello everyone. Thanks for your patience for those of us, those of you who have been waiting for a little while. I'm just talking into the Zoom, so I can't really see who's out there. Yeah. Oh, somebody's saying, so we can record. Okay. So I guess we're not getting recorded yet. That's perfect. Yeah, we're just going to start the recording. Oh, it told me, the Zoom told me this meeting is being recorded. So Tansy, Janet Smylie at Sine Cassin, hopefully I'll say that better after this summer. I'm going to sign up for some online Cree. But I'm a Métis family doctor and public health researcher. And I am here tonight with one of my favorite people in this universe, the amazing Shirley Bourgeois. I'm going to let her introduce herself, and then we're going to jump into some COVID Q&A.
Hi, everybody. My name is Shirley Bourgeois. I'm an exemption Métis midwife, living and working in Tekaronto. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I've never done a live Zoomcast before, so this is kind of funny.
You're probably, everyone's gonna probably want you to do this after. So Shirley and I are here because we want to make sure our community, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, and all the people from all the 4 directions have a good understanding about COVID vaccination. And we're here in Tekaronto, the territory of the Huron-Wendat, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas of the Credit, and then a meeting place for a whole bunch of people since then. And I've been kind of stressed out over COVID. I think maybe some of you can relate to that. Yeah, part of what I've been doing is trying to make sure that we could access that medicine chest, Treaty 6 medicine chest clause and these vaccines. And then we got really busy. We got really busy vaccinating people. We've almost vaccinated, given 6,000 vaccines. Who would have thought at the Odoje Center? But now it's slowing down. But some of you that know me, I've been able to work with the midwives, NAMI Res. I'm very interested in counting us all in, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, wherever we are, and do that in a way that's by community, for community. So I can see that about half our community hasn't come in for this COVID vaccine. And I can understand that because I know that there's like a lot of other pressing priorities, but I'm no big fan of large pharmaceutical companies or biomedicine. I am a family doctor. I'm in that system, trying to punch out some space for us. So we're hoping we could just address some questions that people have, because there's a lot of information going out there. So here we are as 2 Métis health care providers, yeah, we hope that most mornings we wake up for the good of the people to just answer questions and see what we can do to support people to feel comfortable if they would like to access COVID vaccine. Hey, Shirley, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I think that one of the reasons, so SGMT along with NAMERES is one of the community leads, partner leads on the project of Odoje, which is started off around providing access to testing and then moved into vaccines, providing vaccines once they became available. And part of the reason and part of the thing that motivated us to get involved is just that in midwifery care, we see a lot of people who come into midwifery care because they see that that's a good time to start engaging with the healthcare system. They want to get care when they're pregnant. They're excited to come to midwives. But actually, there's a lot of avoidance. And I experienced this in my own life as well, where I will avoid or put off getting healthcare until things are like could have been prevented or could have been dealt with sooner. And so, and really that comes from past experience of seeing how my family was treated in the healthcare system. It comes from past experience of just feeling really disempowered and not feeling like I'm a very good advocate for my clients and not a terribly good advocate for myself sometimes. And I see it, and even then it kind of shocks me that that's the case. And so when it comes to vaccines, I think that we all have good reason to ask a lot of questions, and I really believe in being able to take the time to answer them, and to answer them really honestly in a way that's going to be meaningful for the person who is sitting in front of me. That's kind of a model that we use in midwifery care anyway, and so it's a model that I'm really comfortable with, and I just really want to uh, yeah, I want to support folks to really make informed decisions and then understand the impact of those decisions. So that's what really motivated me to get involved in Adoge, to help to set it up and run it. And yeah, and that's what motivated me to come here today.
Thanks, Charlene. You know, it's pretty amazing that we have 95,000 First Nations, Inuit, and Métis
Mhm.
people living in Takaranto. Like, that's a pretty huge group of people. So that's a massive thing, right? If we count our youth now, that's going to be like 75,000 people that might want to access COVID vaccine. That's
Yeah,
150,000 vaccinations. So we got 6,000 done. Our relatives at Anishinaabe Health have been doing a lot of vaccinating. But yeah, I think what we need to do is hopefully work together as a community, and try to share what we know, because we're really good critical thinkers. We've had to be to
mhm.
survive,
Yeah.
right? So you can't believe everything you hear out there about the COVID vaccine. And it's good to be a critical thinker. But what I'm just hoping to do, because it's not only for ourselves. There was a really good question. Someone just said, well, why can't we all just like get together and catch COVID and then we'll be immune? Just like sometimes people do that with their kids for chicken pox, or used to do it. So there's two reasons why that can't happen. The first thing is, like, COVID's a deadly virus. It's more deadly than chicken pox. Chicken pox is hard on kids. Yeah, COVID's a tricky relative. It's not an kind or easy teacher, right? It sneaks in there and it's really harsh. So we're seeing that about 1 out of 3 of our community members that gets COVID ends up in the hospital, right? And a large number of those people in the ICU. And with these new variants, um, the, it even it's hitting people younger and it's hitting people harder. So I don't want to make people even more scared about this tricky relative. But yeah, when COVID hits, it hits really hard. So that'd be the first reason. And then the second reason is the immunity from an infection doesn't last. So you can get COVID twice, right? So actually, and that was another question people had. They said, well, I got COVID, so why would I need to get vaccinated? But actually, what can happen is a couple months after you get the COVID, then you're not immune as much. And it depends, like, because you could have had a mild case of COVID, right? So with these vaccinations, they're set up so that you'll have a strong immune response for longer.
Mhm.
Which is why it's really important, because that Pfizer vaccine, you need to get the second dose, right? Or you'll just be like that person who just had COVID, or maybe even less immune. Your immunity's going to wear down.
Mhm. Yeah.
Shirley, should we talk about the different kinds of COVID vaccines? Like, we are mostly working with Pfizer at the Odoge clinic, but that's another thing that makes it really confusing, because there's 4 vaccines and we're all cautious because we all went in hyperspeed, and doing things
Yeah.
really quickly in a rush can be pretty dangerous. We've learned over time we survive by being kind of cautious, eh, Shirley?
Yeah, it's true. And the other thing too is that there's just been a lot of talk lately, or a lot of kind of interpretation of what people have been saying about, is there a better vaccine one over the other? When sometimes people aren't even being told the difference between them, and how they're made. And so I do think, and also with like the changes, right? So as we go and as it gets implemented, it changes according to, at the beginning anyway. Right now in Tekaronto, and I think across Canada, we're in a time where vaccines are very readily available. They're around. You can go to clinics. In Ontario, they've opened it up to anybody. Anybody's able to go. There aren't necessarily priority groups. And but at the beginning, and I think that this actually played into some of the worries, is that there might only be one type of vaccine available because that was the one that was delivered. And then there was, and then there'd be a shortage of that, and then there'd be another kind of vaccine delivered. And then they opened up a vaccine to only a certain portion of the population. And I think that all of that information in the and all of that, hearing that on the news, hearing it, by your local public health authority, I think that that's a lot of information to take in, and it's really normal to also be questioning, why are they doing that? Like, why is it only for those people? Why is the hospital giving this vaccine versus this being provided in community? And I think it can create a lot of misconceptions about better or worse, or and even frankly, if I'm honest, like thinking about um, something that I heard over here in where I'm working, not at a doge but in Toronto, is that the vaccines that had to be given at the hospital were considered better vaccines than the ones given in community because lots of people were avoiding going to hospital. So there, even sometimes, like the idea of what's better and worse, we're mirroring some idea of like who has access to what vaccine, right? So
Okay, so let's do kind of vaccine type ABCs, because this can be really important too, because who wants to take a vaccine when you might get a blood clot, right? And they said the blood clots were 1 in a million, and then they said they were 1 in 300,000, and then they said they were like 1 in 50,000. Okay, but not all the vaccines are the same. So there's two kind of very similar vaccines, Pfizer and Moderna, okay? And both of them do not have a live virus in them. They actually have a technology called mRNA. And that makes people scared because they're like mRNA, like RNA, that has something to do with DNA, right? And we know like DNA are sacred instructions. So like we're worried about like epigenetics and harm to our DNA. The good thing is mRNA is made by DNA, but it doesn't go in the opposite direction. So messenger RNA cannot harm your DNA, okay?
and it doesn't change your cells or your DNA ongoing.
It can't, no, it
Yeah,
doesn't.
it's
It's just a
impossible.
one-way street,
Yeah.
like that way. It's kind of like, yeah, it goes down from cookum, right, to like the grandma to the mom to the kid. It doesn't go in reverse, okay? So if DNA, yeah, is the nucleum, right, then RNA is the parent, and the protein, the spike protein is the child, okay? And you can't, children cannot birth a grandparent yet. Anyways, so basically, those are the ones I'm most familiar with. And in fact, I'm most familiar with the Pfizer vaccine. That's the one we've been working with at Odoge. Both Moderna and Pfizer require 2 shots. There's no live virus in there, and they use this mRNA technology, and it's actually a pretty clean technology. The thing
Janet, what do you
about
mean by clean?
yeah, I'm going to do that in just a sec. The main drawback of Pfizer early on was it was really hard to handle. Like you had to keep it at -70 in a freezer and make sure you had enough people so you didn't waste any. But in fact, now we are handling it slowly. Now we can keep a vial in our freezer. So that's really good. What I mean by clean is that you pee out. So the other good thing is it doesn't harm your DNA, but when it's done its job, and its job is to help your immune system get to know, become familiar with. I was thinking, I just thought of that coronavirus. It's like a unicorn. It has a spike protein under, and that spike protein is the way it enters your cells. Okay, so all of the vaccines, actually, all 4 of them target that spike protein, because what it does, if your immune system can attach to that spike protein and disable it, COVID can't hurt you. Okay, so what it does, it's clean. The mRNA vaccines, Pfizer and Moderna, are clean because what happens is the vaccine that you get, it sends some messenger RNA in your body, which is just a set of instructions, a protein. Okay. It's in a little bit of fat. And that fat passes into some of your own body cells, and they start producing the spike protein but no virus, right? So the spike protein on its own can't hurt you, but your body, anytime, like when we get a sliver, right? When we eat something weird, inhale some dirt, we're introducing weird proteins in our body all the time, and the body's saying, hey, that's not me. So it says, hey, that's not me. And then it starts producing what I call warrior cells, like that actually are targeted for that unicorn spike on the COVID virus, and also the antibodies. But it's actually those warrior cells, which are also known as T cells. And they're the same ones that can be um, harmed, right? Like in some infectious diseases like HIV, but we have them and they target that COVID virus. So the thing I mean about clean is, so then after your immune system has been stimulated, you just pee out the mRNA and you pee out the protein. So there's none of that vaccine left in you. What you have then is your own immune system stimulated, but we have things coming in our body all the time to stimulate our immune
Mhm.
systems. Um,
One
so
one of the
yeah, go
things
ahead.
that it makes me think of is like, or another way to think about it, and how I've been talking about it, especially with younger folks, is that, when we lived in warrior societies, and when we were planning or expecting, anticipating being in conflict with somebody, what you try to do is identify their weak point, right? And then you try to plan for that weak point and to use that. And so you would get all of your warriors ready to be able to take advantage of that. And in this case, what's happened is that the weak point of the coronavirus is the spike protein. So we say, oh, we could use that weak point to be able to bring it down or to stop it. And so your body starts to almost like create and train this whole T cells, like these T cells, like these like warriors in your body, to be able to use the weak point of the virus trying to come into your body to take it down and to stop it from making you very ill.
Yep. So you get antibodies from your
Mm-hmm.
B cells, you get these killer cells and T cells. So you have a whole set of different kinds of warriors, and they're all ready for the COVID virus if you do get exposed to it, and they just latch right on right away to that spike protein like the unicorn horn, and then the COVID is disabled and you're protected.
Mm-hmm.
So the other viruses, the other vaccines, or it's been a long day and a long 15 months, eh? So sometimes I misspeak. But the other vaccines, the AstraZeneca, it also helps your body produce antibodies and warrior cells to attack the spike protein. It uses a virus called the adenovirus. It's like a form of a cold virus to transport it in. So there is some live virus, but it's not a very harmful virus. But the problem with it, that whole process, it does cause a little bit of extra inflammation. And in some people, that could lead to the blood clot, but it's very rare side effect, and those people would probably already be predisposed to some clotting disorder, and that extra inflammation that happens
Yeah.
increases the risk. It's still, when you get COVID, you're at risk of a whole bunch of blood clots too, if when you do, so the risk is much lower than getting COVID. But that's why they said for people under the age of 30, it's not a good idea, and that's why we're tending to use, we have lots of Pfizer vaccine and we can move it around a little bit. The Moderna, we just don't have as much, and the supply isn't quite as regular, but it's pretty well exactly as effective as the Pfizer. But you do need 2 doses of both of them. And then the last one, the Johnson and Johnson vaccine, the really good thing about it is you only need 1 dose of it. But the challenge right now was just some concerns. I think they're being extra careful, which is good, and we like, about some of the manufacturing conditions. So right now we don't have that one coming into Canada yet, but it's been approved, and it could be really handy for some situations where it might be hard for someone to track onto their second vaccine. But what we're set up for here in Takaronto in Ontario at Odoje is we can use the Pfizer vaccine, and I really think so far using it, we've had some really good experiences. We've vaccinated almost 6,000 people. So the main short-term side effect of the Pfizer vaccine is a little soreness at the site of vaccination. People are familiar with that. The only serious side effect is a short-term side effect. So when we heard about that early on, so it's also kind of clean because there's not, every vaccine has to have something that it's mixed in. Remember I said that those Moderna and Pfizer vaccines, they are put in a little fat blob so that they can get into your cell. That fat blob has got something called polyethylene glycol in it, which is actually, I think, in windshield wiper fluid, but apparently I didn't know this. It's in some cosmetics and some drug coatings. But in fact, it's very rare that people are allergic with polyethylene glycol. But yeah, 1 in a million people might be allergic. So then you'd have one of those kind of allergic reactions. It doesn't cross-react with eggs. Remember, like some of the flu vaccines, you have to be careful about eggs. And it doesn't actually cross-react with a whole bunch of other prescription medicines, like hardly anything. So that sucks, but that didn't happen to us so far. I could knock on wood, but if it does, actually, when you have those big allergic reactions, it's pretty easy to treat, right? Like the immediate ones, because you just, that's a histamine mast cell response. So you just give people some antihistamines, right? So we've got an EpiPen and we can manage that. It's not like we're vaccinating people in the middle of the bush. So that's the most serious side effect. We can talk a little bit about the reactions after the second shot. I have a question here about, do you get ill after the second shot? Did you want to talk about that one,
Sure.
Shirley?
Yeah. So I want to add on to what you had to say first, and that's that in I've had a chance to. One of my favorite jobs at a doge is hanging out in the recovery room, meaning just that 15-minute waiting room after you get the vaccine. I
The
love it there
party.
because I just
Yeah.
chat with everybody and we play music and it's like really fun. And I will say that of the reactions that I've seen, the majority of time it's folks who are very anxious, and so it's just really about, let's check and see what's going on, let's make sure that this isn't a medical reaction that needs a response. And oftentimes it's just about talking it through, calming down, doing, maybe because I'm a midwife and I talk people through calming down all the time is why I like it so much. But it's that I would say would be the most common reaction that I see. And you know what, that's also a very normal reaction to, it's been a very overwhelming time for a long time. So and managing COVID. So it's a very normal reaction, and it's really okay. And that's why we keep you around for 15 minutes, is so that just that we can make sure that you're leaving in a good way after you get your vaccine. We don't want you leaving and feeling anxious after you go. So that's part of the reason why we keep you there to visit for that time.
Yeah.
So after the second shot, so what can happen after the second shot is that you already have a kind of base level of antibodies from the first vaccination. And what happens with the second vaccination is that when it goes in and your body starts to make more antibodies, then you can have a higher reaction or a higher amount of symptoms. Your symptoms might be a little bit stronger than it was during the first vaccine. I know that I can tell you that, like, personally for myself, something that happened with the second vaccine that didn't happen with the first was that in the arm where I got just one of my lymph nodes was a little bit swollen for maybe 2 days, something like this. And I was like, oh, it's a little tender under here instead of just on my arm. And then it passed. It's usually any symptoms or reactions that you get will parallel a flu-like reaction. So you might be kind of tired, you might have a headache, you might feel a little achy, and it's all stuff that is manageable with Tylenol. And it doesn't, one of the questions that I've been getting a lot is people worried that they have gotten COVID from the vaccine. So they get the vaccine, then they are worried. And we've actually gotten some phone calls asking about this, like, is it possible to be able to actually get ill from the vaccine? And it's not possible to get COVID from the vaccine, especially if you're using if you're receiving like 100%. If you receive, you can't get ill from the vaccine. But with Pfizer and Moderna, like Janet said, there's zero virus within the vaccine. So it's like just not even on the table. It's not possible to do that. And the like I say, the symptoms can last up to about 3 days, and then they go away as your
So
body makes more antibodies.
like a lot of our symptoms when we have the flu are actually like the fever is our
Yeah.
body's immune system fighting the flu germ, right? Like, so basically those symptoms in some ways, my colleague Dr. Suzanne Shish pointed out it's actually a good sign, because when your lymph node was swollen up there, Shirley, it means, yeah, your warrior cells are
Yeah.
they're in training, man.
Yeah.
So that taxes the body a little bit. I have uh, twins who are 12. So they had their second dose on Tuesday, and one of them just a little tired. The other one, he had a bit of fever, right? It's all gone by 48 hours. When I had mine, my arm was a little sore, and then I woke up the next morning with the kind of achy muscles that you can get when you're having a viral illness, and I had a little nausea. But by 72 hours, it's all gone,
Yeah.
right? So it is a bit concerning to some, but I knew there was no virus, and actually, it's like, oh, good. I'm a little older now, but my immune system is still
Yeah.
doing its workout. So it's
I would say the
basically
same.
like you're,
Sorry.
yeah,
I
you
felt
feel like you've
reassured.
done a bit of a workout because your immune system is doing the workout it needs to do to get ready in case it's exposed.
That's right. I felt reassured that I knew the vaccine was having a therapeutic effect, right?
Yeah.
That was the signs that I could tell that it was working.
And see, you need to get that second shot. And that's one thing, because I'm really seeing and worried and hearing like people don't want to come in for the second shot because they felt really bad after the first, or they heard somebody felt bad after the second. But yeah, it's all over after 72 hours,
Yeah.
right? It's your immune system doing a little workout. It has no permanent long-term harms to your immune system. Um, the one thing too is some people, if they had COVID before, and there was a question about this, so some people are feeling quite sick after the first shot, and for some of them, there's a good chance they did get COVID
Yeah.
already, right? Because what happens, the reason why we need those second shots is our body needs a reminder. Remember, I said if you've had COVID, you still need to get vaccinated, because with COVID, it's a bit tricky. So, and our immune systems do better if we have a reminder. You guys have probably heard, like, if you're allergic to something, like you're allergic to bees, you don't necessarily get the bad reaction after the first sting.
That's right.
It's the second sting. You're going to say something, I think, Shirley.
I was just gonna say the other, like, just to build on what you're saying about getting the second shot and this kind of worry about getting a second shot, or you have one and you feel like that's enough. And I really, one of the other pieces, or one of the other questions that we had was about how it all relates to variants. So now we have the alpha, beta, gamma, delta. I can't remember
Just
what the
after we had that one tricky auntie that showed up, right?
that's right.
Then we got even sneakier tricksters, right?
Yeah.
It's like a parade of trickster relatives that are coming
True.
in, and they're
And
getting
so
sneakier and meaner as they come,
yeah.
eh?
And so you think about it, and what we do know is that the being double vaccinated does provide a good, like, it's quite effective against the variants. But we know that after getting one shot, that you don't have as much coverage against catching the variants than you did when it was no variants of COVID, when it was just the original COVID. So that's another big motivator to be able to actually prioritize and make sure that you get the second shot, is that it significantly increases the effectiveness of the vaccine against the variants and
Yeah,
against becoming very ill from them.
we fought pretty hard for that, eh,
Yeah,
Shirley, to get that
we did.
access, because for a while, yeah, like, and others fought hard for First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, but these were First Nations, Inuit, and Métis healthcare providers and leaders, right? Like, so we're the only group right now, one of the only groups that can get the second dose as per product monograph, right? But the reason we did that is because we were seeing, we've got, yeah, we were seeing in our practices, Shara, people getting sick after that first dose.
Yeah.
So don't be fooled into thinking that you're protected with that first dose.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to be able to, the other thing about the variants that come is just that they're a lot, they're like, it's not exaggerating when saying that they're a lot more contagious. And so if somebody you know does get exposed with a variant, then um it's like the chances of it spreading are just, it's like exponentially higher, which
That's why
is,
we had such a worse third wave here
that's
in
right.
Takaronto. It was all that, it was that new variant moving
That's
in.
right. Yeah.
So somebody said, can we powwow again after the vaccine, right? And yes, we will powwow again. But so one of the other reasons, and I'm not trying to sell you like a used encyclopedia or anything like that, but yeah, I do want to make sure everybody has the information they need to take best care of themselves, but also to think about ourselves as we do as a collective, right? Because we have pretty strong social networks. We like to gather. We like to have massive gatherings, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is that um, the more of us that get vaccine, then the more we'll be likely to powwow, right? So right now, with only 45% of our community having first shot and like only 12% being fully vaccinated, powwow will be scary, right? Even with the low numbers, right? Because the more people you have, the more chances you have of exposure. So
Yeah.
the thing is, that's why, and on reserve, they're putting us to shame here in Takaronto, right? Because they have 70%, so they can powwow, right? Once you get 70% of your community vaccinated, you can powwow. That's like, so the thing is, depending on where you are in the wave, like if you were in Manitoba right now, yeah, you might want to wait a little while till you're down that steep curve, because you always have to look, just like anything. It's like you don't powwow in the middle. Well, I guess I'm not an expert on that, but yeah, you have to look at the weather conditions, right, for most of what we do. I guess you might have to modify if it's like a big, huge thunder and lightning storm on the
Mm-hmm.
prairies, right? So we have to look at how much COVID is out in the community. So if 70% of our community was vaccinated right now here in Takaronto, then I think there could be a planning of a powwow in the
Yeah.
next month or so, right? But right now at 45%, even with the numbers really low, what's going to happen is the numbers are going to go up a little bit when we reopen. And that's the thing, this trickster COVID, it tells the story of unequal access, right? Because then every time it's hurting the people, right, that are already experiencing extra load of challenge, but we're resilient too. So the question about when we can powwow is going to be related to the question about what the vaccine uptake is in our community, right? Like, and the problem with everybody just getting together and get COVID. I guess if everybody was under the age of 10, you might be okay, but keep in mind there have been young people that have gotten very ill, like in our communities in past, eh? But the thing is, then all those people, those young people in that gathering, they go somewhere, right? Because we're intergenerational, right? So, and then even somebody that's had 2 vaccines and is very elderly, right? You know, could still get COVID. There's still a small chance, right? And yeah, if you go home and there's mixed rate uptake of vaccination, maybe there's people who've only had one dose, then we'll start seeing it bubble up in our community.
Mm-hmm.
So for sure, if we can powwow, so that's why even in mainstream, that's what they're saying, like at about 70%, when 70% of the community has vaccination and the rate of COVID out there goes down. We still got this new Delta variant that we have to deal with, a new trickster Delta variant. So
Mm.
that's kind of probably why they didn't put us, our kids back in school. Did you want to say anything else about that, Shirley? Am I being too negative? Some people said early on I was calm and friendly. So, but it's been a bit of wear and tear now.
I would just say that sometimes it feels to me like when I read public health advice and when I read kind of like these numbers, like 70%, it's a bit of it feels sometimes a bit like a blunt object, right? You're trying to do the best for like the largest amount of people. And something I think that's really important to remember in our communities is that, if 70% of the general population is vaccinated, oftentimes what we'll see, and certainly what we're seeing right now, is that it's not equal. 70% of the general population being vaccinated does not mean that 70% of the indigenous population is vaccinated. And so,
90% of Rosedale, right? Like, and
yeah,
10%
right?
in Scarborough, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's really important to remember that I think a lot about all of our ancestors who came before us and all of the decisions and the pandemics and the like colonial onslaught that all of our ancestors have dealt with. And sometimes I think to myself, like, why how did I get here? Like, how is it that how is it that like I'm here now and so many other people have never had the chance to make it to being here now? Like, why is it us who survived, right, to this point? And I think that it's sometimes about making and prioritizing and recognizing that we are, you know, it's we sometimes have to do things that we're scared of in order to be able and kind of not knowing everything that's going to happen, making the best decision that we can with what we know in the moment about the health and well-being of our communities and of our children and of our future generations that will be coming after us, because I want them to survive, and I want them not just to survive but to thrive. And being although I work in healthcare, I'm often suspicious of or I'm not as quick to trust, frankly, a lot of recommendations, or like I'll question treatments and wonder if it's the right thing to do. And the place where I've got come with this vaccine is that it's it's real. What I know is that it is the best thing that will help our future generations to survive. And I think that sometimes what happens and what I've heard is a little bit of a um, is kind of like downplaying the effect of COVID or what COVID actually is. Like I hear a lot of times, well, it's just kind of a bad flu, right? Like it's just, it's nothing really. You don't have to worry about it. If you get it, it's not a big deal. And frankly, I I never wish COVID on anybody, but if you do get COVID, I really hope it's that. I really, really do. But the thing that we know about COVID is that it is something that it's not just a simple flu. It has effects, and people are still figuring out what they are in terms of neurological effects. Possibly, these are all possibilities. Not everybody has this, but sometimes there's neurological effects. Sometimes there is they're effects that you can't always predict, and you don't know what's going to happen when you get it. And
Breathing
so
trouble, like with
breathing trouble
your breathing
ongoing.
system, blood clots. It's pretty
Yeah.
nasty long COVID.
Yes, and it's a very and knowing that 30% of Indigenous folks who get COVID end up hospitalized to some extent really makes me think a lot about what we can do to support the survival and thriving of our community. And And the vaccine is our best choice with what we know right now. And waiting and seeing what will happen with the vaccine, because that's the other thing I hear a lot is a lot of people who haven't gotten the vaccine yet, almost everybody will say to me, I'm just going to wait and see. I'm just going to wait a bit longer. I'm just going to wait. And I think it's like fair, but like, what are you waiting for? What's going to be the threshold or the line? And is it, and I really hope it's not a line that is um, too late, either from like an ongoing issue that you see a friend or a family member or somebody having to deal with after having gotten it. Seeing, I had a friend who was putting off getting a vaccine who was in her 50s, and she called me and just said to me, what is, like, I think I'm ready to get it, and it's because I have a good friend who's my age who's in the hospital right now. Like, that was her line of waiting, right? Was like, oh, I didn't really understand how much it could affect somebody my age. So I think it's also interesting to really think about, if you're somebody, if you're one of those people, you're not alone, first of all, in the wait and see approach. But what are you waiting for? What, like, think about that for yourself. Like, what would you need to see, or what questions do you have, or what do you want to understand better, to that would help you make your mind up. I had a recent conversation with a mother of a client of mine who came in, she just had to ask me all, like, she had a list of maybe 10 questions, and she kept saying out loud, I'm embarrassed to ask you this. I don't even think it, like, I think this is just a conspiracy theory, but I'm going to ask you anyway. And you know what? Like, yeah, some of it was conspiracy theories, but you know what? She had the ability to be able to ask and have it all answered. And I really think that I really believe in everybody having the chance to do that and not feeling ashamed or worried about what people are going to think of your questions. It's really important to have a place to ask them.
Yeah, and that's why we're doing this tonight. And of course, we can't get to everybody's questions, but that's our approach at Adoge too, right? Like, no question is a silly question. We'll honor. And there's been so much courage, right? Because, a lot of people are afraid of needles too. I've been really honored. A couple of people I knew, like family, friends, or patients were afraid. So yeah, I could help them and support them in a good way. So we're pretty nice out there. Shirley, I want to talk a little bit about, like, one of the things about waiting, I think it's actually quite wise. Like, we've survived by being cautious, right? Like, that's many of us and our ancestors. One of the things that is a bit scary is how quickly the vaccines got developed. But one of the things I was reassured to learn about, and one of the questions we have here, is this messenger RNA technology has been around for quite a while now, about 15 years. And it actually was used in other vaccines starting back to 2017. And it was used in cancer treatments before that, because it's a pretty clever little thing to just send in the code, which is a protein, right? And then it makes a protein. So in the cancer, they would send it in, and instead of using that spike, the unicorn horn of the COVID relative, they would be using like a identifier protein on a tumor cell, right? So then the body would say, hey, tumor cell, we got you now, and fight that cancer. So that was pretty reassuring. And I did look again, and at the very beginning, there's a lot more literature now about the long-term side effects. So I looked at the studies where they'd been using the messenger RNA, and there's really not a lot of long-term side effects. So you could, how long will you wait? Because actually we've been using like the Pfizer mRNA vaccine now for almost a year. It'll be a year in July. And it's a pretty clean, we pee out the mRNA, we pee out the protein. All of them stimulate our immune system. That's why you get a bit sick. So, do we know 100% that there's not a long-term side effect that will show up in 10 years? No. But the thing is, like, the way it works, the way it's clean, the way that it's been used in other vaccines, and the way nothing has shown up, I guess it's always just a risk benefit thing. So I eat weirdo food, like, with food additives that is probably going to be more riskier in my mind. Like there's known like bad
And
and unhealthy things.
I think what you're saying, Janet, it really helps for me to put in perspective the idea of how is this safe, or to address some of the questions around how is this safe for younger people who are still developing. So
Yeah.
when we look at like 12 and above, or people going through puberty, or the questions around lots of the questions around even fertility, things like this that I've seen come up. What you're saying really lines up with, we're not changing cells, we're not disrupting puberty, we're the technology has been developed in a way for your body to be able to get rid of the pee out the mRNA. Like, it's not staying in your body forever. It's all of those things speak to the decision making and the reasoning behind opening it up to, and also the testing. It's not just reasoning, it's like also they've done testing to be able to make the vaccine available to younger people.
So we're stimulating the immune system, but our immune systems get stimulated every day, right? When
Hmm.
we eat, breathe, cut ourselves. So, yeah. Anyways, I feel like also the other thing is no other medicine that I'm aware of got tested in so many people. Because I checked
Yes,
again, because I was
that's right.
checking, I'd said tens of millions of people have gotten the Pfizer vaccine. It's probably actually hundreds of millions, because there's been
Yep.
over 1 billion vaccines given,
Wow.
and I think, well, there's been a lot of AstraZeneca and a lot of Pfizer. So there's no 100% certainty, but one of the things about how long to wait, like, because Friday things are going to start opening up in Takaranto, right? So like, to me, June is the ideal month to get vaccinated, right? Because it would be the ideal month this summer for us to just work and take your time. We're not as busy at the clinics anymore. I'm happy. Just call Odoje and say you want to talk to Smylie. I'll book like a day of like spending half an hour answering everybody's questions. Like I think that um, because what'll happen, unfortunately, this COVID thing and with the new variants, that's the other reason why not to all just get COVID, because the more people that get COVID, then it gets smart because it morphs, right?
That's
So
right.
it can, all these new variants are because it got to have a party in human populations, right? So to get rid of it around the world, we need to like resist it. Don't let it in our
Mhm.
bodies. Our bodies are sacred, and this COVID virus cannot come in and have parties and then create new variants.
That's
So
right.
again, once in the fall time, because it's nature, right? So things go up and down, there's cycles. So like, I don't also want to be dismal, but we're going to get some little bumps. We'll get some little bumps. Hopefully they'll be minor this summer, right? And then depending on how we are as a world and a global society, if we make sure everybody around the world has access to vaccine, we might be okay. If we don't do that, we'll get new variants all next year, but
That's
we'll worry
right.
about next year then. Hey, Shirley, did you want to talk a little bit about like risk in pregnancy and some of this fertility stuff? Because
Yeah.
people are worried, and you mentioned it already, they're worried that it's going to prevent pregnancy or that they
Yeah.
won't be able to get pregnant after getting their vaccine.
The first thing I'll say is that it's highly recommended for any pregnant person to receive the vaccine in their pregnancy. And it was interesting because it started off at the beginning that pregnant people were not included and not recommended to have the vaccine necessarily. And then there was quite a switch to that. Actually, we're prioritizing having any pregnant person come in to be vaccinated. And part of the reason for that is that when you're pregnant, because you're growing a whole other human being inside of you, sometimes your immune system, or no, your immune system is compromised, meaning that it's having to work harder. And so what they were finding over time is that if a pregnant person were to contract COVID, then the chances of it actually progressing to be a more serious case of COVID is was much higher. And so, and the other thing that we found just in talking about like, you know, antibodies and producing antibodies is that they have also been able to establish that when you do get it in pregnancy, that some antibodies pass through the placenta to the newborn. So the newborn is carrying some antibodies against COVID as well. And we do know that babies can catch COVID. Like it's not that they can't, like they can catch it. So it's really highly recommended. The things that I've been seeing that people have been worried about have been around reports of changes in your cycle. So reports of changes with menstruation. So anybody who menstruates or bleeds once a month or has moon time, there can be a change in the cycle. And what that means is usually that either the actual moon time is heavier or lighter, depending, and it's really varied. There's a spectrum. It's not that it's one or the other. There's really a spectrum of what that looks like. Now, they don't have specific research about what happens with the vaccine how it could affect your moon time or your cycle. But what we know and what people are theorizing is that just like with any flu or with any virus that you have, it can affect the lining of your uterus because part of the process of like the cycle of moon time is that the lining of your uterus needs to be built up. And then if an egg is not implanted, then the lining of your uterus kind of gets ready to shed or gets ready to come out. And so if you have a virus or if your body is working really hard and your immune system is working really hard during that time of building up or during that time of getting ready to come out, then it can affect the way it's actually built. So it's partially related to your immune system, that building of the lining. And so they think what they're theorizing and what they believe is that if you get COVID or if you get the vaccine, it for that cycle that you're in, it can change the quality of the lining for that cycle in and of itself. So it's not something that is ongoing. It's not something that is long term. There is zero evidence that it affects fertility, and there's zero evidence that it interferes with puberty either. It is very, very similar to if you were to have or to go through a cycle and have a flu, like have like the regular flu that you would get every year on a cycle. That also has the same effect on the uterine lining.
Yeah, I just gave it to my twin boys who are turning 13. They're
Yeah.
right in puberty, and if I'd had any worry at all, of course I wouldn't
Yeah.
have given it to them. Okay, so Shirley and I have gone a little bit over, but because we started a bit late, but just on that, so people wanted to know about youth and child vaccination risks and recommendations. So we're still waiting again, but yeah, age 12 and up, can get vaccinated, and there's been lots of youth. It doesn't interfere with your puberty, right? You know, it doesn't cause infertility.
That's right.
Lots of things stress our moon cycle,
Yeah.
right? Like athletes know that. Like
Yeah.
people skip their
Your
period
diet,
when, yeah,
your stress,
a little flu.
yes,
Yeah.
it can
Um,
interfere with how long it is, how heavy it
yeah.
is, how light it is, all of those things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why it's the body just
Yeah.
doing the workout, right? Of
Yeah.
getting ready, training for this COVID virus. Um, So somebody asked, can fully vaccinated adults interact with children who are not old enough to be vaccinated? So yes, of course, we are doing that all the time. The thing is, if you're going outside your bubble, the things you have to think about is how much COVID is out there, right? So we're pretty good now. And then for those fully vaccinated adults, what are their background kind of health conditions, right? Like, so, you know, people that have a high load, or a burden of chronic disease or are very old, right? You might want to think the weather's nice, think about visiting outside. Your risk of spread goes down by 15 to 20 times when you're outside, right? But then you might want to just consider bubbling with some of those. We're going to be able to expand our bubbles, right? So yeah, should an elder that's 80 that's fully vaccinated like go hang out like at Disneyland and hug every kid that goes by? Probably not, right? Maybe that isn't a good idea in the best of times because they'll carry lots of things, right? But can an 80-year-old grandparent like see their new grandkids this summer when
Mm.
they're fully vaccinated? Yes, as long as that the parents of those grandparents have been pretty cautious and you're thinking about where. So where in the country could you do that right now? Like I think up in Temiskaming area, there's been no cases for quite a while. So that's pretty cool. Toronto, we're just coming down. We had one case in the last week at Odoge. We've had less cases, so pretty soon. So you can talk to um, so just the things that it's just in addition to the adults being fully vaccinated, you have to think about like the circle, like where those kids have been, right?
Yep.
And how much COVID is just out in the community around that adult. Using masks. So, and again, that's all because we look at the CDC recommendations in the US, people are dropping masks. I think that we still are waiting to see what happens with the Delta virus. We're just coming down a horrible third wave here in Canada.
We're just
And
not quite, we're not quite there yet in
yeah,
terms of not using masks here. So
yeah,
all of the same precautions that you've been doing, wearing masks, washing your hands, using hand sanitizer when you're out, those are all still just, they're very good practices for being out and about when things do start to open up in community.
yeah. And they're going to be maybe good practices anyways.
Yeah,
Some parts of the world do that all the time and people get way less flu,
yeah.
right? But yeah, I think what we've said at the science table, and this was even in third wave, and it may be changing, but outdoors, if you're socially distant, more than 2 meters apart, you don't need to wear a mask. If you're coming in closer and pretty soon, and you know, if you're coming in closer and you're all fully vaccinated, right, and you're within the 10 people, you can think about that. But ideally, if you're with people outside of your bubble, still wear masks if you're coming in closer than 2 meters apart. And then inside, it also really depends a lot on the ventilation and stuff like that. You know, you assess it. I was bringing a big truckload of people. I was so excited to bring like 5 or 6 people over to Odoge on Tuesday to get their vaccines, including my own kids. So what we did, we'd all had first vaccine, right? Except for one child who'd had COVID though, but we opened the windows, right? And we separated out. So we had, it's a big vehicle. So we had 3 rows of seats and we kind of bundled people together, but we all wore masks in the car with the windows open,
Yeah.
right? So like those are the tricks to being indoors together. And then once, if we can stamp out COVID, it's kind of like a root fire, right? So we're still like, there's still like some little fires burning hidden here and there. So the more we stamp it out, it's great. That's the wonderful thing when you see those waves go down, they like, it's horrible when it goes up because it multiplies, right? It doesn't just go 1 + 1 = 2. It goes like 1 + 1 = 4 and then equals like it gets squared every time. But when it goes down really steeply as well. So we want to keep it going down steeply, have no cases, and then we can look at dropping those masks first outdoors.
Yeah.
So I think that was quite a lot of the questions. Somebody said, so I think the take home messages really are at this time, like do what you need to do, reach out to people you know and trust. Shirley, myself, the Odoge team, the Call Auntie line, Anishinaabe Health Toronto, we will be there to try to answer your questions and help break through some of the myths. Getting vaccinated if you feel comfortable and that's the right thing to do. This could be a good time to do it while things open up. We want to, because it benefits not only yourself, but it does benefit the collective. So the vaccine's kind of a double like miracle, really. I believe, and I think about our ancestors. I think because I got some Treaty 6 kin lines, right? How they thought about that medicine chest, right? So if we didn't have this vaccine right now, the world would be in a much different state, right? So the good thing is it actually has individual benefits, but it does have collective benefits, right? So at first, we knew that it would help make sure people were in hospital less and die less, right? But we do know that being vaccinated now does actually interfere with spread as well,
That's right.
right? So that's why the whole reopening, now that we know that, is all set around like how many people are vaccinated. So that'll be for our community as well. But we trust that everybody will do what they feel comfortable with. And we know just by being open and honest and transparent and respectful that we'll get there, eh, Shirley?
That's right. Yep. Just keep going forward. That's the only way to go, right? And so we're going to do that together.
Yeah, so come on down and see us at Odoje or give us a call. Say you have some questions for us, and I'd be pleased to give you a call back. Call Auntie, go down and see Shirley at SDMT. It's a good time over there too.
Yeah.
Just wishing everyone all the best for the summer. Looking forward to getting our visiting going again. Oh, one more question from Jess, I guess, before we close. Okay, Jess? We're just looking in. Do you want to type it in for us, Jess? Or you can unmic yourself and ask us the question. Just when we thought we were done, eh, Shirley? Or maybe just when they thought we were done, whoever was still listening. Oh, here we go. What can you explain about the long-term effects? Oh, that went too fast, but I can get back to the chart. Okay, here we are. I'm going to read them, okay? What can you explain about the long-term effects of enlarged hearts in male teens or women's having their menstrual cycles change, miss their periods? Okay, so I think Shirley already talked about women having their menstrual cycles change or miss their period. So that can happen, but like we said, that's because there's a little bit of stress in the body, just like you can skip or miss your period if you go for a long run, right? Like or have a heavy duty workout. So we're working out to fight our immune systems are functioning to produce our warrior cells. Did you want to say any more about that?
Yeah. So developing the endometrial layer like in your body to that is actually the thing that leaves during your moon time, that is affected and is connected also to your immune system. So anytime you have any flu, any virus, if you go fast, if you if you train athletically, anything that connects to your immune system can affect your the endometrial lining. So it does not it can affect a cycle in the sense that it can change the quality, meaning how heavy or how light your moon time is. But there is absolutely zero evidence that it affects long-term fertility, and it is actually a very normal response to any kind of virus or vaccine that gets your immune system working. So and the great thing about the way that people who menstruate are made is that it's a cycle that takes 28 days. It follows the moon, and every month it recharges, like it remakes itself. And so because of that actually works to an advantage for folks who do menstruate. That there is no proven long-term effect on fertility at all, but the quality of your menses, of your bleeding, may be different, may be lighter or heavier depending on where in the cycle you received the vaccine, or you became sick with coronavirus, like where in the cycle that is, and how it translates to how it comes out. And fertility has not been, there's been no link. So I think that was a jump that happened because people were reporting changes in their cycle at the month that they received the vaccine, but there's been zero reports of it. And even people who received Pfizer as a part of the trial, a certain number of those people became pregnant after having received the vaccine, or were pregnant.
23.
23
Yeah.
people.
because we
Um,
couldn't experiment on the pregnant women.
yeah, yeah, but they followed it up. I don't have information about enlarged hearts in male teens. I haven't
Oh,
heard that before.
I didn't either, but I do thanks to Grandma Google now.
Yeah, okay.
So this is just a great question. It's a merging concern. Basically, there's concern that people have been getting inflammation of their heart muscles, myocarditis, which can happen actually with other viral illnesses as part of the immune response, and it's more common in men between the ages of 16 and 30. So actually in Israel, they vaccinated 5 million people, and there was 275 cases of the myocarditis, which means that there was one case in approximately 20,000 people that were vaccinated. But the thing is, myocarditis, like one of the problems is because everybody's getting vaccinated all the time in the world, we get different illnesses, right? So what you have to figure out is this happening just because it happens normally, like that many people, young people get myocarditis? Because young people can get myocarditis as a result of many viral illnesses, and most of the time it goes away. So I didn't know about it before tonight, but the evidence isn't clear, so they don't know yet if it's linked to getting the vaccine, right? In this younger age group, it occurs in younger people. I'm the one that just vaccinated my almost 13-year-old twins. So in theory, they could be at risk of this, or is it just because that illness happens anyways, like with that frequency? Because I've certainly seen young people. The good news is young people with those kind of inflammatory myocarditis usually get better. Obviously, if it's confirmed, right? So with the AstraZeneca, right? The good news is we're seeing these rare side effects if they exist. So with AstraZeneca, like people were starting to get blood clots, right? Which is pretty serious. But at first, it was a very small number of people, but then we actually start observing and looking for it. So what I can tell you about, it's not permanently enlarged hearts. It's an inflammation of the heart muscle called myocarditis. And most of the time it goes away. And they do not know yet if it's caused by the vaccine, right? Or if it was just those young people getting other viral illnesses that was causing the myocarditis, and it's very rare. But it does appear to be more frequent in men between the ages of 15 and 30. So then again, and then what you could do, so if you're a man between the ages of 15 or 30, or supporting a man between the ages of 15 and 30, you could talk to your healthcare provider about it. I guess you have to just weigh the risks and the benefits and do what you're most comfortable with. So most of these side effects are all really just our immune systems responding to things, right? But yeah, it's not like we do see that as a side effect of other viral illnesses for sure. I've seen it in my medical practice, and usually people, it doesn't usually turn into a chronic myocarditis. Okay, so with that, Shirley, shall we sign off for the night then?
Yeah, Kinanskumten, everybody. Thank you for coming
Yeah.
out. Really appreciate it. And this is my first time doing this, so it's been pretty fun.
I think you're
Thanks
pretty
for
good at
everybody's
it. I'm just like jealous. You
generosity.
look, she was saying that I was more photogenic than her. There was like kind of an error in the promo thing, but like, yeah, she looks pretty nice. I even turned my air conditioning off, so I'm like kind of all sweaty and shiny and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm like, what's happening to that Zoom thing? It's supposed to make me look good. Anyways, enough about that. We'll sign off, and yeah, let us know if you want us to come back. It can be the Shirley and Janet show, or maybe just the Shirley show. Okay,
Okay,
great.
folks.
Night, everyone.
Night.